the copyright owners of Pretty Women ended up suing Two Live Crew. So why did they reject your sample clearance request?
So like with the song Me So Horny, we didn't get sued for that record until like 4 months in, but it became a platinum single. So we knew that they were going to come on that one, but we just said, well, we'll just deal with it when it shows
comes.
up.
Okay.
Right.
So cross that bridge when you get to it.
Right.
And you got to it with the Pretty Women. All right, hi everyone. You are watching another episode of the Method to the Music show. Just like there is a method to the madness in life, there is a method to the music business. And this show aims to put you on game and teach you all about all things music business related. I am your host, Tynia Coats, Tyla. And yes, in today's episode, we are going to be covering copyright infringement and copyright fair use within the copyright world, which is really just when you are allowed to use someone's song without their permission. We also are going to be covering obscenity laws. I am very honored to have a guest this episode, which is Mr. Mix, who is the founding member and producer for the iconic group Two Live Crew. Two Live Crew had one of the most seminal, important cases in copyright law, and they dealt with a lot of issues around obscenity laws. So that is why he was a perfect guest to have on. This episode will be broken up in two separate videos. So in one part, we will be covering copyright infringement and fair use in the copyright world. In the other part, in the other video, we will be covering obscenity laws in music, which is going to be covering the clean version of music, the dirty version of music, the explicit version, parental advisory stickers, when your sexually explicit lyrics are allowed to be played on the radio and TV, and things of that nature. This episode that you're watching right now is going to be about copyright infringement and fair use in music, when you're allowed to use someone's music without their permission. I did have this conversation live for the Roc Nation School. So there were actually slides that were in the background of the video, but they didn't get captured in the video. So I might try to throw them up on the screen through editing, but I might not. You might have to do without them. Just keep a note of that. Another thing to keep a note of is that this was a live 2-hour-long conversation. So the video that you will be watching has been edited down from that. So if it gets a little messy somewhere, just know that it's because it's from a longer conversation. But yes, let's get into the episode. Wrap up that segment. So we have not discussed fair use yet. And that is why I have Mr. Mix here today, because Two Live Crew has one of the seminal, most important cases in copyright law in the music industry. So that's why I brought him here to talk about this. Actually met Mix at WBLS 107.5 for the New York City area. You were an on-air guest for that day.
And just hanging out.
No, you were on air that day. You were not just hanging out.
You're unannounced hanging out.
Hanging out. I think you were also promoting some new music for new artists that you were working with, or that signed you.
Yeah. I was up there visiting a friend of mine, Chuck Chill Out, and he invited me to the station, and I bumped into her, and it's very funny how you can run across connections just based on just doing what it is that you naturally do. She wasn't introduced to me like this, or being an attorney. She was just up there at the spot, just hanging out. Sure. I'm just hanging out. I was barely introduced to her, so it just ended up becoming, the situation that it is now. So, you just never know. You always got to be on your game, look like you supposed to be there, and you just never know what can come to you when it's like that.
No, I'm just laughing that you said look like you're supposed to be there. Because
that's
look
right.
Like you're supposed to be there no matter what. I was supposed to be there. Let me say that. I don't know about you, but I was supposed to be there. So yeah, thank you for coming out here today. It is so important. So I wanted to have him here so you guys didn't just get the legal aspects of copyright infringement and fair use, but also the experience as the artist and the creators and what they go through as those legal disputes are happening. So if you do not know about Two Live Crew, because some of you are some youngins in here and you may not know. Two Live Crew was a groundbreaking, trend-setting, barrier-breaking hip-hop group. They honestly had so many albums and singles that topped the top Billboard charts and top hip hop and R&B charts. You had multiple albums that were platinum, double platinum, gold. You guys made songs, actually created songs for the movie Friday. We're asked to create a song for the movie Friday, which, fun fact for me, because I was in love with that movie when I was younger. And my siblings and I used to act out that movie all the time. And my favorite scene to act out was the scene that Hoochie Mama was playing behind. And that's one of your guys' most popular songs that you made for that movie. Two Live Crew also made songs for the iconic Black movies like New Jack City, Boys in the Hood, and I brought the whole Friday soundtrack because the Friday soundtrack that their song was on was a double platinum album, and it was the #1 album period in the country at the time for multiple weeks on Billboard charts. So that's why I brought that up. But beyond the charts and the accolades, Two Live Crew truly has created a whole lane in hip hop and in music that has never been seen before. They were the forefathers of the Miami-based genre. And beyond being that, they also broke down so many different barriers that allowed for today for sexually explicit lyrics to be able to be commercialized, monetized, and distributed. So I know that sounds like nothing, but a lot of songs today have a lot of sexually explicit lyrics, and they would have never been able to be on the radio or get airplay or anything today if they didn't go through the things that they went through. So that is commendable. And Mr. Mix right here himself, he is the founding member of Two Live Crew.
Keep clapping. I want to get this on camera.
Yes, he's a founding member of Two Live Crew, and you're also the producer on all the Two Live Crew albums. So you're actually the person who curated and created that Miami-based sound. You're the person who, one of the first people in hip hop, honestly, to utilize the 808 drums and get the people moving, make the crowd go wild, doing what you do. So I am very excited and happy that you decided to come out here to have this conversation with us today.
Yep. I'm very happy to be here, like Akeem. I'm very happy to be here. Yeah, it's all good.
Coming to America. Here we go. Don't have a song in that though.
Right. Not yet.
Not yet. I mean, it's already out, so can't really do that. But yes. So because I actually do need to teach you guys, I am going to be weaving in and out of this conversation with some that sounds like that went out. It did not go out. Some educational gems for you all. So let me start off with that first, because you're still in class. So let's do that. Okay, copyright infringement, as we have been going through. When you are a copyright owner, copyright holder, there are exclusive rights that you have, meaning that you're the only person that gets to give permission for someone else to do these things. And those rights would be to make a copy or reproduce the music, to distribute the music, to perform or play the music publicly, to make a derivative of the song, which would be a sample, basically. That's normally when that comes into play. And also to display the music, which is displaying the lyrics or the sheet music. So as a copyright owner, those are the exclusive rights that you have. And when anyone uses your music in any of those ways I just listed, then without your permission, then that means that they have committed copyright infringement. So, they've committed copyright infringement if they've used it without your permission and it doesn't fall under a copyright exception. And one of the exceptions that we've learned in class already so far is for cover songs. That's one of those ways that you can use someone's song without their permission, as long as the song has been released and you don't change the basic melody, the basic lyrics structure, or lyrics period, just don't change the lyrics period, then you can cover someone's song without their permission. That's just an example, not gonna go into it. And I'm gonna ask that you hold your questions till the end of this time. But just hold them, write them down. Friday, write it down, take a picture. I don't give up. That's a Friday quote. But yes, so the exception that we have not gone over, there's so many other exceptions under the copyright law, but the exception that we have not gone over is fair use. That's why I brought Mix here today, to go over that with you guys. So with the fair use exceptions, a person is allowed to use someone else's work without their permission if it falls under these certain categories that are right here. I was honestly in the perfect position to see this TV, and now I'm not. So let me move a little bit. How am I looking on the camera though? Okay, there you go. Yes. So these are the ways that the federal government have decided that it could be fair use for you to use someone else's music without their permission for criticism and commentary. If you make a song that is basically a critique or a commentary of another person's song, then that would be considered fair use. Parodies fall under that area, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Also for news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research, all of those fall under fair use exception. Now, the fair use exception is a defense, meaning that it's not automatic. Like when I said for the cover songs, you guys learned that with a cover song, the copyright owner has to automatically give you permission to use their music, but that's not the case with fair use exceptions. You basically have to just put it out there and then see if the person's going to sue you. And then if they do sue you, then you have to go through the copyright infringement procedure and then claim that you made the song as a parody and fair use is an exception. And that is exactly what happened with Two Live Crew in 1989. You guys decided to sample and interpolate the song Pretty Woman by Roy Orbison and make a parody version of that. And you released it on your album titled Nasty as They Wanna Be. And the copyright owners of Pretty Woman, they did not like that. They were not happy with that. So they sued you guys. They brought you to court for copyright infringement. And this case actually went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they won in the Supreme Court. And I have to emphasize how important and how major that is, because the Supreme Court is the supreme law of the land. Anything that the Supreme Court decides in a case, it becomes the law for the entire country, for every single person in the country, for every single state in the country. And that's why it's very, very important. So because we're going to be talking about the case, I do have to teach you guys about like how the court system works, court authority. So when someone sues you or when you sue someone for copyright infringement federally, your case is going to get brought in the district court first, and that's the lowest level of court. That's where a jury is going to decide your case. And then if you're not happy with that decision, it's going to be, you can appeal it. And basically that's going to go to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals is not decided by a jury, it's decided by a group of judges, and they're going to decide if they're going to keep the decision of the lower court or if they're going to reject the decision of the lower court. And if you're still not happy with that outcome, then you can appeal to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is the highest court in the United States of America. There's nothing else that trumps it. And they barely take any cases. Honestly, that's why I said it was very important that and major that Two Live Crew's case even made it to the Supreme Court, because they barely take any cases. So there's around 7,000 to 10,000 cases a year that get submitted to the Supreme Court, and only 700 to 100 get heard. So that's less than 1% that get heard each year. And that's just out of all cases, not just music, criminal law, divorce law, discrimination law, all cases. So music cases rarely ever make it to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court decided that it was important enough for the betterment of our country to decide on Two Live Crew's case. So that is why it was a big deal and why it was a major situation. Now that I went through all that, now we can jump into conversation, because I had to teach them about all that.
Right.
Yes, but before we get into the case, I do want to play a snippet of the song that you guys sampled for your parody without their permission, and then a snippet of your parody versions, just so everybody can hear and know what the song sound like and what we're working with as we go through the discussion. And I'm not trying to get in trouble for copyright infringement, so for everyone who is watching this video, you have to go and play that for yourself. Yes, so pause that, play it, and then let's get back into this video. Okay.
Thank goodness it was the clean version.
I play the clean version.
Yeah, that's the only version that's out. Thank goodness we didn't do the explicit one. We didn't put that one out. Now, the funny thing about the Pretty Woman song that we did, basically we were the first group that got put in a situation to where the very first album that we put out got bought by a 14-year-old through their mom, and the mom didn't have an understanding of what was on the music. So what ended up happening is Tipper Gore actually put a thing in place to where the albums had to be stickered, parental advisory sticker, which our group we made the sticker, and it was the first time that an album had to have an explicit version of it and a clean version of it. So you had to have two separate masters. So what we did with the Pretty Woman thing, we put it on the clean version of Nasty as We Wanna Be because we knew it wasn't gonna go good with the explicit version that we did, and nobody's even heard it. It's in the archives. It exists, but it's in the archives. But yeah, it's it's just really funny how that actually got all of the hoopla that it got. I'm gonna step out to go ahead and
No, you're good. That's actually a good story because that's definitely something that should know that you guys truly were the Two Life Crew was the first group or music artist period who had to have a parental advisory sticker attached to their albums. That never existed before, so that's the reason why parental advisory stickers exist to this day, or parental advisory. I guess now we're in the digital world, so no more stickers, but it says parental advisory on the music that's happening. That all came from a whole bunch of parents and people lobbying against their music, and that is why that was created to be law, for sure. So thank them when you guys got to make a clean version of all your songs.
yes.
Yes, but okay, let me get into the conversation questioning. So you or Two Life Crew asked Roy Orbison or the copyright owners of Pretty Women before you guys released that song. You actually asked them for approval and permission to release that song. So why did they reject your sample clearance request?
Well, in those days, it was 1989. Biz Markie got sued a couple of years after that happened. So the rule of the day was just take the record, do what you're gonna do, and let the chips fall where they're gonna fall. So when we did the record, I'm not sure if the company actually put in a clearance request because at that time nobody's records was on the radio, so nobody really knew what anybody was doing. So like with the song Me So Horny, we didn't get sued for that record until like 4 months in, but it became a platinum single. So the information of the record being out in the world made the guy that we sampled the record from reach out to us. So a lot of stuff was going, you would get sued for some stuff, and then some stuff people didn't even know it even existed on the records. So it just passed through. So, but with this thing, I'm not really sure there was, our policy is just do it and just see what happens. So, but what ended up happening is that it's funny because it was maybe about 6, 7 months after the Nasty as We Want to Be album was out, it had outsold the clean version like 9-1, 10-1 or something like that. And the Pretty Woman song wasn't on the Explicit album, it was on the clean album. So it's really funny that they even found out about it because it wasn't released as a single, none of that. But I just think the fact that by their music being involved on an album that was causing so much hoopla, and George Lucas from Star Wars and all that, he sued Luke Skywalker for us using the Luke Skywalker name, even though it was spelled differently. He sued them, and they were thinking that our studio, Skywalker Records, had something to do with Skywalker Sound, or Skywalker Studio. I think it just made a lot of people start paying attention to what else are they doing, and I think that's how it kind of got in play, because I think it didn't happen until like 91. The album had been out, so maybe it was just inquisitive on their part, wondering what it was that was happening.
Yeah, I actually, from my research, I guess now you can confirm that you put the song out in 1989, and then they waited almost a year to bring a case against you guys for the unauthorized use of the song Pretty Woman. So probably like a year in.
And that day, in those days, there was no such thing as reaching out to the people. You didn't know how to reach out to
I
them.
thought that did happen though. So you're telling me that it did not happen.
No,
You guys
no.
never actually requested sample clearance
In
from
1989, nobody knew how to reach anybody. If any, the only way you got reached out to is if your record got on the top 10 or something. Then a person would go knocking on the door and say, "Hey, you got my shit running through your music. What's going on?"
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. And then, like with the "Me So Horny" song, it was a guy at a group called Mass Production. The record had sold a lot. We had to end up settling with him, and then put his part of what his contribution to the song was. They had to redo the splits because the splits was just us four.
Yeah.
Just us four, as far as the group. So he got pushed into the splits, and our splits got squished. So that's what would happen in those
what
days.
Happens. I do want to say that to my class because they know we already went through sample clearance this semester. So that's exactly what happens when you have to clear a sample. Splits get smushed. That's what happens. So I did want to ask the question of why was it important for you guys to put parodies on your album? Like what purpose did it serve creatively and I guess commercially? Why was it that important to even have it on your album?
Well, the funny thing about it is that we never really looked at it as a parody. We were looking at it because parody was almost like taboo for rappers because you can't be biting somebody's stuff or you can't take somebody's stuff. You have to be as original as possible. So when we're looking at parodies, we're thinking Weird Al Yankovic, well, what it is that he was doing.
Is a parody king,
right? He's the parody king. But what we were doing, we were making it like, okay, this is a record that everybody knows, so we're gonna make fun of the record in our way, but we're not really viewing it as a parody, even though it falls under that. So we had did a record on one of our other albums. We redid Do Wah Diddy. They sued the hell out of us.
And that parody is way more popular than the Pretty Woman one.
Right. So we already had an understanding, and that's why, it didn't get put on the Explicit album. It got put on the clean one. So when they do come, they can only get royalties off of the clean album, which is only selling 1/10 of what the other one was selling. So we're being kind of crafty in some ways of it also.
So you knew that going into it.
Right. If it's gonna get stopped, let them stop the clean album, not the Explicit one.
No, that was a good thing to point out. That's why I wanted to know that question because I'm like, creatively, commercially, what went into your decision-making process there? Because a lot of the students here, they're making their music, they're making their albums, so maybe they're going to want to do certain things that would be helpful to them.
Right.
Because I was going to ask another question about, did you guys know going into it that this would fall under fair use to be a parody? But you just said that you did not think about it as a parody going into it.
Right, exactly. I guess when people knock on your door, then you try to figure out, okay, what's your options? As you being an attorney, you get in a huddle. Okay, well, which way can we attack this?
Yeah.
So I think that was spoke on because at the time when the lawsuit came in, the group was in hiatus. So they're calling Luke's office. So he's in the huddle with the attorneys, figuring out which way they're gonna go about doing what it is that was needing to be done. So it's just like I say, nobody was thinking about clearing anything. Only people that had their ears to the street and found out that their record was being used is the only way that people got paid. And then most people were stonewalling people. It's like, yeah, I used your record, sue me. Because if you sue somebody, you got to come over at least 5-10 grand just to get the ball rolling. The average person ain't got the 10 grand to go after you to keep it rolling and this and that. So that's why all of hip hop became what it became, because nobody was in a position to stop it from. And that's how all of these records are on major labels. They weren't clearing them either. They was just putting them out.
Mm-hmm. At that time.
Yeah, at that time. Pre 1992. Everything was just, a free for all, because most of the stuff, just like I said, if it wasn't a single, it went under the radar. Nobody even knew that the records or the recordings even really existed.
All right. I think that was some good insight. So I was going to say that you guys decided to put the parody out anyway, but you actually did not request.
No. But at the same time, we always knew, like with the Me So Horny song, we knew that record was a big urban song originally. It was a song called Firecracker. We knew that they were gonna come on that one, but we just said, well, we'll just deal with it when it
When it
shows up.
comes, okay.
Right.
You'll cross that bridge when you get to it.
Right.
And you got to it with the Pretty Women case.
Right.
That's definitely what happened. So
Right.
with the song Pretty Women, as I said before, the copyright owners of Pretty Women ended up suing Two Live Crew, and then they brought a case for copyright infringement to the courts. And as a defense, after the little attorney huddle that you guys had, you guys claimed fair use and parody law. And like I said earlier, with the fair use exception, this is not something that's automatic. This is a defense. This is when the court has to decide. They have to evaluate whether a song truly is fair use. They don't just believe you when you say, oh, it's a parody. They have to go through a whole test. So let's go through what that test would be, and excuse the little mess up because things got transferred and they don't come up the same way on these screens. But when you use a song for fair use, the court is going to consider certain factors. I did teach you guys last week about factors versus elements, but I'll save that for a review question. But these are the factors that the court are going to go through when they're determining whether your song is fair use. Again, let me move again. So the first factor that they consider is the purpose and character of the use. Basically, they're just going to see if you're using the original song and you're making money off of it, or if it's for a nonprofit, or you're just putting it out there. A lot of mixtapes do this. They'll sample songs, throw it out there, not make any money off of it, not monetize it for this very reason, for this first factor. The second factor is the nature of the original copyrighted work. That just means that they want to see if the original work that you copied off of, was that a creative work or was that a biographical or factual work? Because if it's a creative work, then it's going to be harder to prove that's fair use. If it's like a book about someone's life, you can kind of just use fair use because it's just their life information or factual information. The third factor that the court looks at is the amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. Basically, if you use more of a song or most of a song, then that is going to weigh in favor of them not granting you fair use. And if you use less of the song, that's going to weigh in the favor of them granting you fair use. But they flip-flop on this all the time. There's not actually a true test for you to know. This is just their opinion. Because they do have a whole other test that they do called the heart of the song, where they check if you use the heart of the song. So even if you use a small amount of someone else's song, but it was the heart of the song, then they will consider that to not be fair use. Sometimes you can get away with that, as we'll see with the Two Live Crew case. And the last factor that the court will consider if your song is fair use and you can use someone's song without their permission is basically if you're going to affect the market harm for the original song. So they're going to check to see if other people would take your parody version and start trying to make money off of that rather than going to the owners of the original song. And with Two Live Crew, let me try to get this clicker to go again. Well, it didn't really work. With Two Live Crew, I said before that they went all the way to the Supreme Court and won, but they actually won in the district court first. Before it even went to the Court of Appeals, they already won. The district court said it should be fair use. They should be able to sell this album. They should be able to do what they want to do. And then they decided to appeal the case. It went to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals had a problem with this, and they had to go through the same exact test again. So the first case was decided by a jury. This one's decided by a judge. And the judge said for these factors that the first one, they said because Two Live Crew had an album that was making a lot of money. At this point, they sold like 250,000 albums at this time. They said that this should automatically make it unfair. That's what the Court of Appeals said. Then for the third factor, they don't really talk about the second factor, but the third factor, they said, well, they used the heart of the original song and they used it also in there as the heart of their parody version. So that should also make it not acceptable for fair use. The last version, they said that at that point in time, which was true, there were other rappers who were requesting to get sample clearance from 2 Live Crew to use their parody version. So this is going to create a whole new market where rap songs could become parodies of rock songs or other genres, and that was going to take over that market. So that's what they decided. But then 2 Live Crew actually decided to appeal that case to the Supreme Court. And like I said, the Supreme Court never actually accepts cases like this, but they did in this instance. And the Supreme Court decided otherwise. They said, no, it's actually okay. So under the first factor, the Supreme Court said that even though they were making money off their album, they could still be considered fair use. They could still be considered to use the parody without the owner's permission. This is the first time in US history that the Supreme Court ever decided that a commercial parody was fair use. And still to this day, that's the reasoning for that. They also went to the heart of the song. They said, even though they used the heart of the song, it's a parody. A parody critiques and comments on the heart of the song. They decided to critique and comment on the heart of the song. Of course, they were going to use that. And then it was transformative. They changed the lyrics after that. They made it like a whole different type of version rather than the same message of that song. And the last part, they kind of just thought it was crazy, the Supreme Court, that people would think that a lot of people are going to go out there and make rap parody versions a lucrative market to replace rock songs and other genres. So that was the reasons why they decided against that. So I know that's like the boring parts for you guys, but those are parts that you need to know. Okay. So that, let's go there. This is really not working as well as clicker. Yes. Okay. Now that we know all of that, I want to ask you walk us through the decision-making process behind moving forward and appealing that case to the Supreme Court. Because at that point, most people at the Court of Appeals level, they're just going to take the L. They're going to move on because lawyer fees are expensive. And at this point, let me just go through the timeline. The song came out in 1989. They sued you in 1990. The district court made a decision in 91. The Court of Appeals made their decision in 92. Supreme Court 93, and then 94 they decided everything. So this is like a 4 or 5 year period where you're going back and forth fighting in court, and that costs a lot of money. So what made you guys believe that this is so important that you needed to fight that decision?
Well, at the time, just like I say, between 92 and 95, the group was in hiatus. So Luke has always been a fighter. He always feels like, all you got in you is a fight. So I guess, sometimes things with certain people are worth more than money. And especially if you feel like you're getting a certain amount of money, you can fade it. Okay, yeah, I'm going to handle that. I'm going to just go win, lose, or draw. So I think that was his thought process about it. I don't think it had nothing to do with it. Well, we can fight this. We can go to the Supreme Court and we can fight the thing, and then we'll be superstars and have the only thing. Nah, it wasn't that kind of thought process with him. It was more so kind of like, being, an agitator to a degree with the fact of
he wanted to be petty.
Yeah, somewhat okay. Petty. I can't really just say that, but by us being friends at that time for a long time, he definitely was a person that wanted to try to prove his point on what a situation was, good, bad, or indifferent. He was just that type of cat. But it ended up working out because what ended up happening, just like you say, they agreed in our favor. Now we won the Super Bowl on the fumble recovery. You know what I'm saying? Not like we were really trying to, win, but it just became, it wasn't it wasn't on us that we was going to win or not. He just took a shot at trying to be able to do it, and it ended up working out for the group.
Yeah. So then because you're speaking a lot about what his thought process was. So you, as the group member, you just went with.
Yeah. Well, we were, we're attached because we made the records at the time. We weren't, as a group that was dealing with each other at that time when that was going on. He was still running the record company, but myself and Kid Ice and Marquise, we were all doing our own separate situations. So when those lawsuits came up, he was doing it himself with that. But, like I say, when we made the records, we're the four guys that put all of the stuff together, did what it is we did. So it's almost kind of like at the time, maybe he just went about just trying to do it because he probably was making a lot of money with H Town with the Knockin' the Boots song and was, just doing this, that, and the third.
Good song, still a good song.
Right.
Sorry, the R&B nights be going off for me with that song.
Yeah. So just like I said, I just think that, just the fight in him in general, to just see what it could be. But I know that he didn't think it was going to be a groundbreaking case. I know that for certain.
I don't think anybody thought it was going to be a
right,
groundbreaking
exactly.
case. Honestly, that doesn't happen. So
right, exactly.
That was very surprising. And also, I just want to point out that it's even more surprising because this was a unanimous decision, meaning every single Supreme Court judge agreed that this song should be considered fair use, and that does not happen. There's normally at least one judge that's opposing and that has a dissenting opinion against that. But this time it was a unanimous decision. They just decided that this is something that.
And it's funny, by speaking about it, I just think that maybe at the time the Supreme Court justices, with what it is that we were doing and just rap as a whole, it was still in its infancy. So they're kind of looking at it on, these motherfuckers ain't Bob Dylan. You know what I mean? They ain't nobody really important or no particular significant. Why is this stuff even in our courtroom? And so.
But they accepted it. They don't
Yeah.
So they thought it was important enough. And
right.
For some reason.
Right. No, I get that, but I think that at the same time, I don't think that they really could have the discernment of looking at us like we're a Bob Dylan or we the Beatles or this or that. They were just thinking that we're just some four guys in there BSing around. And why are we even dealing with this? So I think it was more so that, but it's cool because now as time goes on and nobody would ever thought rap would get to the space of what is just like Biggie made the song in '94. Who would get this far? Nobody really thought. Everybody looked at it like it was a hustle. It wasn't really something. Yeah, you got some deals. Maybe somebody got a deal with Atlantic. Somebody got a deal with somebody else. But it was still viewed as a hustle. It wasn't like you hit the promised land and you're just going to be in this space for life. Nobody ever even thought that they could be celebritized. Maybe Run DMC, maybe. But nobody else probably thought that. I would say them out of anybody probably thought they could be celebritized.
All right. Yeah. All that makes sense. Honestly, I will even say that even in that case, the Two Live Crew case, they did have to bring up a lot of points of like explaining to the court culturally what rap music is and the roots that it has culturally and why that should allow certain things to matter or not. So all that you said, they probably didn't know. They probably didn't really know, but it's all right. We move on. We evolve. But let's move on a little bit now because at the same time, and this time you were involved with the group at this time. So I'm going to move on to the obscenity laws portion because it still applies to today and it's still things that you guys do need to know when you're making music out there. All right, guys, and that is the end of part 1. Make sure you come back to my channel for part 2. To make it easy on yourself, just make sure you subscribe to my channel. Hit the little notification bell so you are notified whenever new videos are posted by me. Also, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Tynia Coats. I'm just going to post some other kind of content there. If you want to get some more, please comment on this video, like this video if it has been helpful to you, if you enjoyed it, if you found it interesting, all that good stuff.